Teya was known for his female conquests, and his dancing partner remembers him boasting about them. But her husband used to share a room with Teya and was in no doubt about Teya and Rudolf's affair.
He came home and Teya was in the room with Nureyev, and Teya told him, "Oh, please, can you go for a walk out?" And of course Konstantin did it, yeah. And it happened sometimes, you know.
Several times?
Several times, yes, several times.
What did he think about that?
Oh, he thought the right thing, I think.
For me, on stage, a man should be a man. Sometimes I got confused which was the girl and which was the boy in some of Rudy's roles. It was hard to tell the way Rudy did it.
He was so concerned about his shape. He wanted to make his legs longer in any way he could. And he made them longer by dancing half point. After him, everybody started dancing that way, everyone who could. Rudik's style was powerful and male, with nothing feminine at all. Never ever.
To be a good dancer, you have to have both feminine and masculine. You have to have it. It's crazy. It's a very crazy life.
Around this time, Teya made a little film which has never come to light before. Rudolf walks, reluctantly perhaps, up steps into the unknown as he thinks about his friends Xenia, Teya himself, and Alexander Pushkin. He seems to be saying goodbye, a foretaste of his defection a few months later. It could, of course, have been edited this way after the defection, but compared with the shots of the others, those of Nureyev on his journey seem specially staged. His life up to now flashes through his mind. Teya seems to be giving him the momentum to move on from his career at the Kirov to the world stage. That's exactly what he'd been urging Nureyev to do.
Sometimes I could be with them together because Nureyev did like my coffee, and I cooked the coffee in the kitchen, and Teya told him, he agitated him, when you want to be a famous dancer, you have to go to West. So from here, maybe you have a very difficult character, maybe they will not take you to the tours to the West when they go, because you are making problems always, like with trousers, you know. So it's better you go before they stop you.
His discussion with Teya may not have prompted any immediate plans to defect, but it meant that if and when the moment came, he was mentally prepared to launch himself into the wider world. The first steps towards the defection were unwittingly taken in November 1960 by young Frenchwoman Janine Ranguet. The Kirov were due to visit Paris in the spring, and she'd been sent to Leningrad by the organizers to check things out. At one performance, Don Quixote, she stumbled on someone the Kirov had never even mentioned.
Suddenly, I saw a young dancer, and I was so much impressed that I took those pictures, because I had the feeling that that was an important moment. And I didn't know his name, and I asked an old lady, a Russian lady, and she said, "Oh, that's Rudolf Nureyev, is the best dancer of the company." I went back to my hotel and I sent a telegram to my directors Tonight I saw the best dancer of the world.
But just as Teya had predicted, Nureyev had not been selected for the tour. The French organizers went to see the Soviet Minister of Culture in Moscow to find out why.
They put the question, and Mrs. Fortseva answered, "Yes, we know Rudolf Nureyev. He's a very good dancer. But there are some problems." "Which problems?" "Oh, he's not behaving always very well."
The Soviet authorities expected good behavior from their heroes. In April 1961, a month before the Paris tour, Yuri Gagarin was the toast of the whole country. As the first man into orbit, he had brought the Soviet Union victory in space and a propaganda triumph at the height of the Cold War. The same month, Teya Kremko captured on film what was to be almost the last appearance by Nureyev on the Kirov stage. The Soviet authorities had just given in to pressure from the French and put him on the list for Paris. In May, his friend Leonid saw him off at Leningrad airport, his last steps on Russian soil for many years. Nureyev wasted no time in getting his first taste of Western Europe. At a formal reception at the Paris Opera, he broke ranks and broke the rules in making contact with the French dancer Pierre Lecotte. At Nureyev's invitation, he went to watch the Kirov dancers' class.
Suddenly they start to jump and to turn, and I was astonished. I said, my God, that boy has a fantastic talent. And he pushed himself, do more pirouette than all the other one, jump higher, and so. So after the class, I went to the bar, and after 5-10 minutes, I see my Rudolf coming, crossing the street, like if he was in his own place, you know. And he arrived and he sit in front of me, he said, what did you think? I said, it's a joke, of course, what I think. I think if you really dance that way, you shall have a triumph.
What we are paid for is for our fear. That you can do all those things quite easily without public, without those lights. I mean, it's nothing exceptionally difficult. But the moment you have public there, and it all takes a very dramatic edge. That may be what makes it all exciting. You transform in front of those lights and in front of really glare of all those eyes.
Nureyev's debut in Paris was in a Russian ballet unfamiliar in the West. It gave him the freedom to slot in his party piece as his solo in the hope of dazzling the French as he had the Russians 3 years before.
In the middle of this very, very quiet ballet came this eruption. It was like suddenly a hurricane coming on. It was extraordinary. They were just wild, yelling, shouting like in a football game. I mean, they were absolutely out of this world.
Everybody was talking about him, everybody, because it was such a sensation.
Nureyev was as hungry for the culture of Paris as he'd once been for Leningrad, only this time he had just a few weeks. He persuaded Pierre and 2 of his women friends to help him soak up the city every spare minute, day and night.
He said, that is a Renoir, that is a Degas, that is a fantastic flamenco. He recognized every painting. We arrived in the Sainte-Chapelle, and when he was inside of the Sainte-Chapelle, suddenly, 2 tears, he was crying. I said, what happened to you? He said, it's so beautiful. I would like to live here. I said, live in a church is not very easy, Rudolf. So he said, I'm not joking. I said, me too, I'm not joking, but it's funny.
When they stopped in a cafe, he ordered tea, a Coca-Cola and a lemon juice all at once. When they went to see the film Ben-Hur, he made a scene.
He started to be angry and furious. He stand up and said, Americans are just killer, American. I said, stop this nonsense. Yeah, it's a monster. They are monster, American. You know, he repeated that what he heard in. And I said, are you crazy? And he continued to scream. I said, now go away. And we go in the street. I said, are you crazy? It's not an American story. It's a Roman story.
By now there were tensions with the Kirov management, which had never wanted him on the tour in the first place. There was jealousy from some of the other dancers at the reception he was getting, and the KGB were constantly on his tail.
He told me, look, behind us there is someone who follows us, and he's a member of the KGB. He wants to see what I'm doing, what I'm talking, maybe. They hear everything. We don't say anything wrong. No, of course not, but I'm sure I shall have trouble. I said, but if you have trouble, we stop to see you. He said, no.
As the Paris season came to an end, Nureyev was looking forward to the London leg of the tour, and was also planning for performances back in Leningrad. But there were moments when Taya's advice about moving to the West seemed to prey on his mind.
Suddenly, he asks me, what would you think if I remained here in France? I looked at him and I thought, oh, what does it mean? And probably he saw me very much impressed, that he began to laugh. And he says, you know very well that I like too much Leningrad and the Kirov.
On June the 16th, Rudolf returned to his hotel at 6 in the morning to shower and pack before the flight to London, unaware that this day would change his life forever. In breach of company rules, he'd spent his last night wandering the streets with a friend of Pierre's, Clara Saint. Even at that hour of the morning, his movements were noticed.
In hotels it was always the volunteers, not the KGB, but members of our own company, who sat in the hall all night, waiting to see when someone would come back. All night, purely on a voluntary basis, to prove their loyalty. Terrible.
Both loyalty and vigilance were put to the test as events unfolded that morning at Le Bourget airport outside Paris. Nureyev arrived with the rest of the Kirov company shortly after breakfast, ready to fly to London. Clara Saint had gone to bed, but Pierre Lecotte and several other friends were there to see him off. What happened next has passed into legend.